The hand reached for her chest at exactly 21:47 hours. Raven Blackwood saw it coming. The fluorescent lights in the rinse corridor flickered against wet concrete walls. Steam rose from her shoulders. Water dripped from her hair onto the floor, each drop echoing in the narrow space like a metronome counting down to violence. Three men, triangle formation. Dane Culver in front, 6'2", 210 pounds of muscle wrapped in arrogance. Brett Holloway to her left, always laughing at jokes he didn't understand. Jax Marlowe to her right, silent and calculating, the most dangerous kind. They thought the corridor belonged to them. They were wrong. "Show us what you're hiding under that bra, Mommy." Dane's voice echoed off rusted pipes overhead. His fingers stretched toward her chest, confident, entitled, certain she would flinch or scream or freeze like the others before her. Lieutenant Commander Raven Blackwood, 25 years old, Navy SEAL Team 3, mother of a 6-month-old daughter named Ember, did none of those things. Her hand caught his wrist mid-reach. That's all it took to rewrite the rules at Iron Gate Naval Special Warfare Training Facility. One breath to prove that motherhood doesn't make a woman soft. One heartbeat to demonstrate what happens when predators mistake pregnancy for weakness. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's rewind 72 hours. September dawn broke cold over Virginia Beach. Fog rolled in from the Atlantic, thick enough to taste salt on your tongue, thick enough to hide the thoughts running through Raven Blackwood's mind as she stood in her driveway, staring at the government sedan that would take her back to the place where men died and legends were born. 8 months. 8 months since she'd held a rifle. 8 months since she'd run drills at 0530 with sand in her lungs and purpose in her veins. 8 months since she'd been anything other than Mom. The C-section scar across her abdomen pulled tight when she bent to pick up her deployment bag. New sensation. Reminder of Ember's violent entry into the world. Breach position. Emergency surgery. 47 minutes of controlled chaos that ended with a 7-pound miracle screaming her arrival. "You don't have to do this." Wyatt stood in the doorway, Ember cradled against his chest. 28 years old, contractor beard, carpenter's hands, the kind of man who built things instead of breaking them, the kind of man who married a warrior and never asked her to be anything less. "Yes, I do." Raven's voice came out harder than intended. She softened it, crossed the driveway, kissed Ember's forehead. The baby smell, milk and lavender and something indefinable that made her chest ache, filled her lungs. "For Flint," she whispered. Wyatt's jaw tightened. Lieutenant Commander Flint Garrison, dead 18 months, buried at Arlington, haunting Raven's dreams every night since Syria. Flint, who'd covered her extraction with his life. Flint, who'd bled out covering her position while she hesitated for 2 seconds, just 2, before returning fire. 2 seconds changed everything. "Flint's dead, Raven. You're not. Ember needs you alive. Ember needs me to finish what he started." She climbed into the sedan before Wyatt could argue. The driver pulled away. In the rearview mirror, Wyatt stood holding their daughter, both of them getting smaller until fog swallowed them whole. Raven didn't cry. SEALs don't cry. Mothers don't cry. She cried anyway, silently, watching Virginia Beach blur past the window. The guard at the main gate barely glanced at her credentials. "Lieutenant Commander Blackwood, welcome back." No ceremony, no salute, no acknowledgement that she'd spent 8 months growing a human being while her body forgot how to be a weapon. Just the gate rising, the sedan rolling through, the fog parting to reveal Iron Gate in all its brutal, beautiful efficiency. Concrete, steel, purpose, home. Raven changed in the locker room alone. Black tactical sports bra, PT shorts, hair pulled back tight enough to hurt. She studied herself in the mirror, cataloging changes. Hips wider, chest fuller, belly softer, though her core felt paradoxically stronger. 8 months of carrying 20 extra pounds builds different muscles. The scar ran horizontal across her lower abdomen, purple-pink, permanent reminder that she'd been opened, emptied, stitched back together. Warrior wound, Wyatt called it. Raven called it what it was, evidence that her body belonged to someone else now. Ember owned her in ways the Navy never could. Every time Raven deployed, she left pieces of herself behind. First her youth, then her innocence, then her mentor. Now she was leaving her daughter. The weight pressed against her ribs like a hand squeezing her heart. She forced it down, buried it deep where feelings go to die, and walked out to face the facility that didn't care about her transformation. Iron Gate wanted operators, warriors, killers, not mothers. She'd show them you could be both. They watched her from the moment she entered the main training hall. 3 of them, clustered by the rope climb station, loud enough to be heard but quiet enough to maintain deniability. Dane Culver held court like he always did, all shoulders and swagger, the kind of man who'd coasted on physical dominance his entire life. "That's the SEAL who popped out a kid. Bet she's soft now." Brett Holloway laughed on cue. "Wonder if those tits are real or just milk." Raven didn't react, didn't look their way, didn't give them the satisfaction of acknowledgement. She selected a rope, chalked her hands, began to climb. Pull, breathe, pull, breathe. Her form stayed surgical, not showy, precise. The pregnancy weight had shifted, redistributed, transformed into something different, but not lesser. Her grip strength surprised her. Months of lifting a growing infant had built muscles she didn't know existed. 30 feet up, she paused, looked down. Dane stared back, smirk frozen on his face. Raven held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to communicate what words would dilute. "I see you. I know what you are. And when you test me, I will break you." Then she descended, hand over hand, landing silent as smoke. "Good climb, Commander." The voice came from behind. Raven turned. Master Chief Petty Officer Sterling Maddox stood 6 feet away, 68 years old, ramrod straight despite the eye patch covering his right socket. Gulf War veteran, Kuwait, 1991. Lost the eye to shrapnel from an Iraqi RPG, kept fighting, saved 12 POWs from a bunker complex that intelligence said was impossible to breach. Maddox didn't believe in impossible. "Master Chief, heard you had a baby, girl, right?" "Ember, 6 months old." Maddox nodded slowly, his good eye studying her face with the intensity of a man who'd seen every kind of soldier and could categorize them at a glance. "Some people think mothers don't belong in special operations." Raven met his gaze. "What do you think, Master Chief?" "Capability doesn't care what you've lost, only what you still have." Silence stretched between them, filled with the sounds of men training, weights clanging, commands barked across the hall. "I also think," Maddox continued, voice dropping lower, "that some of the men in this facility haven't learned that lesson yet. Then maybe they need a teacher." Maddox almost smiled. "Almost. Watch yourself in the rinse corridor, Commander. It's not supervised. No cameras, no witnesses." He paused. Perfect place for accidents. He walked away before Raven could respond. She stood alone, understanding crystallizing like ice in her veins. Maddox hadn't given her a warning. He'd given her permission. The cold hit like a fist when Raven submerged. Black water, no light. Simulated helicopter crash, full combat gear, hands zip-tied behind her back. Escape or drown. She'd done this drill 100 times before pregnancy. Muscle memory took over. Dislocate thumb, slip restraints, find the exit, surface. 42 seconds. Instructor nodded. "Good time, Commander." But in the bleachers, watching, Dane and his crew wore different expressions. Not mockery anymore. Something else. Calculation. Predatory patience. They'd been testing women for months, Raven realized. pushing boundaries, seeing how far they could go before someone pushed back. The facility's unofficial hierarchy placed them at the top of the food chain. Young, strong, male, dangerous. They'd never encountered a female who was more dangerous. Raven toweled off, watching them watch her. Brett elbowed Dane, whispered something. Jax remained silent, eyes tracking her movement with the focus of a sniper acquiring a target. In the shadows near the equipment storage, another man stood frozen. Petty Officer 3rd Class Keller Grimes, 26, average height, average build, the kind of sailor who stayed invisible by design. He'd seen something in their eyes that made his stomach clench. They were planning something. Keller looked away, hating himself for his cowardice, knowing he'd do nothing to stop it. Ember's face filled the screen, all chubby cheeks and unfocused eyes, drool glistening on her chin. 6 months old and already the most beautiful thing Raven had ever seen. "She rolled over today," Wyatt said from off-screen. "4th time." I recorded all of them. Of course he did. Wyatt documented everything, building a library of moments Raven was missing. First smile, first laugh, first time sleeping through the night, first rollover. All firsts happening without her. "Let me see." Wyatt angled the phone. Ember on a blanket, tiny arms pushing, legs kicking, body rotating from back to belly with the determination of someone conquering Everest. Success. Ember's face scrunched in concentration, then relaxed into victory. Raven's throat closed. "She's strong," Wyatt said softly, "like her mother. I shouldn't be here. I should be home. You're doing this for her, remember? Am I? Or am I doing this because I can't let go of Flint?" The question hung in digital space between Virginia Beach and Virginia. Wyatt's face moved into frame, beard shadowing his jawline, eyes holding truths they'd both been avoiding. Maybe both. Maybe that's okay. Is it? "Raven, you've been carrying Flint's death for 18 months. You freeze in the middle of the night, staring at nothing, seeing Syria. Ember wakes you up crying, and you reach for a rifle that isn't there." He paused. "You need to finish this. Prove to yourself that his death wasn't your fault. That hesitation doesn't define you." "What if it does?" "Then you'll learn to live with it, but you have to try first." Ember squealed, grasping at the phone screen, her tiny fingers leaving smudges on the glass. "Mama loves you," Raven whispered. "Always." She ended the call before the tears could come. The corridor ran between the underwater training pool and the main locker complex. 50 yards of concrete, pipes, flickering lights, and absolute privacy. No cameras, no supervision, no accountability. Perfect hunting ground. Raven walked through it for the first time on the morning of day 3, hair wet from pool drills, body temperature elevated from exertion. The air felt heavy, humid, pressing against her skin like hands she couldn't see. Something felt wrong. She'd learned to trust that feeling. Combat trains instincts deeper than thought. When your gut screams danger, you listen or you die. The corridor was empty this time, but she noted the layout. Concrete walls, impossible to climb. Rusted pipes overhead, sturdy enough to support weight. Exit at each end, but the west exit led to a dead-end storage area. If someone wanted to corner prey, they'd push them west. Raven memorized it all, cataloging escape routes, weapon opportunities, tactical advantages. Her body moved on autopilot, but her mind ran scenarios. 3 attackers, no weapons, confined space. If they came, she'd be ready. Her name was Morgan Thatcher, Petty Officer 2nd Class, Corpsman, 27 years old with shoulders that curved inward like she was trying to make herself smaller. Raven saw her in the mess hall, sitting alone, picking at food she wasn't eating. Noticed the bruise on her wrist, 4 fingers, thumb opposition, defensive grip mark, recent, maybe 2 days old. Someone had grabbed Morgan. Morgan had tried to pull away. Raven sat down across from her without asking. "Commander," Morgan said, straightening instinctively. At ease, this isn't official. Morgan relaxed slightly, but her eyes never stopped moving, tracking every man who walked past their table. You okay? Raven asked. Yes, ma'am. That's not what I asked. Silence stretched between them. Morgan's jaw worked like she was chewing words too dangerous to speak. The rinse corridor, she finally said. 2 years ago, something happened. Raven waited. I never reported it. No cameras, no witnesses, just my word against 3 men. Morgan looked at her wrist, at the bruise. I thought it was my fault. Thought I'd encouraged it somehow. Wore the wrong thing. Smiled too much. Existed in a space that wasn't mine. It wasn't your fault. How do you know? Because predators don't need permission. They just need opportunity. Morgan's eyes filled with water she refused to let fall. I heard about you, Syria, what you did, how you saved Dr. Mercer, how you never quit. I hesitated, Raven said quietly. For 2 seconds, I hesitated. My mentor died because of it. But you kept fighting. After he was already dead, after I'd already failed him. Morgan studied Raven's face, seeing something in the scarred eyes that civilians never could. Combat changes you, strips away pretense, leaves only truth. What happened in the corridor, Morgan said, it's still happening. Different women, same men. They know no one will stop them. Someone will stop them. Who? Raven stood, picked up her tray. Stay loud, Petty Officer Thatcher. Silence protects predators. Sound protects everyone else. She walked away, leaving Morgan sitting alone, hope flickering in her eyes like a candle in a storm. The underwater drills ended at 2100 hours. Raven stayed late, pushing through extra sets, punishing her body until muscles screamed and lungs burned. Penance for the firsts she was missing. Punishment for the hesitation she couldn't take back. She emerged from the pool at 21:30, water streaming off her body, black tactical bra clinging to skin that Ember had changed, reshaped, marked with the evidence of creation. The locker room was empty. Most sailors had already cycled through, heading to barracks or town or wherever people went when they weren't running from ghosts. Raven grabbed her towel, slung it over her shoulder, and walked toward the rinse corridor. The lights flickered overhead. Pipes dripped condensation that echoed like Morse code against concrete. Humidity pressed against her skin, thick as syrup, making every breath feel stolen from someone else's lungs. She heard them before she saw them. 3 sets of footsteps, deliberate, coordinated, predatory. Raven's hands shifted position without conscious thought. Not quite fists, not quite open, ready for anything. She didn't run. She didn't call for help. She walked forward, steady as a drumbeat, toward the sound of men who thought corridors belonged to them. Dane Culver stepped into the light first. 6'2", 210, wrestler's build, predator's smile. Brett Holloway emerged from the left. 6 feet even, 185, always laughing. Jax Marlowe materialized on the right. 6 feet, 195, silent, calculating, triangle formation. They'd done this before. Where you going, Mommy? Dane's voice echoed off concrete, each syllable dripping with entitlement that had been nurtured since birth, watered with privilege, grown into the kind of arrogance that believes the world exists for taking. Raven stopped, turned slowly, studied them with eyes that had seen better men die. Step aside, Petty Officer Culver. Or what? Dane stepped closer, invading space that didn't belong to him, breathing air he hadn't earned. You gonna report us? No cameras here, sweetheart. Just us. Just you. And that body that used to be tight before you popped out a kid. Brett laughed on cue. Jack said nothing, but his eyes tracked her like a sniper scope. I heard SEALs are built different, Dane continued, close enough now that Raven could smell his breath. Protein powder and entitlement. Want to see if it's true. Want to see what those tits look like now that you've been a mommy. He reached for her chest. His hand moved through the air with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied, never been punished, never been taught that actions have consequences measured in pain. Raven caught his wrist before his fingers could touch fabric. Joint lock. Rotate wrist 180 degrees. Physics demands compliance. The ulna and radius don't negotiate. They break or they bend. Dane's tendons stretched beyond tolerance. His scream filled the corridor, bouncing off concrete, echoing back as symphony to his own suffering. Elbow strike, solar plexus, exact pressure point where the diaphragm meets the sternum. Dane doubled over, gasping for air that wouldn't come, drowning on dry land while his brain tried to remember how breathing worked. Brett lunged from the left, slow as molasses in Raven's perception. Time dilates during violence. Training stretches seconds into hours. She sidestepped, used his momentum against him. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Newton's third law applied with malice. Leg sweep. Brett's face met concrete at terminal velocity. Cartilage shattered. Blood sprayed. His nose exploded across his cheeks like a rose blooming in fast forward. Jax tried to retreat, the smartest move any of them had made. He understood, finally, that they'd cornered something more dangerous than themselves. Too late. Raven closed the distance before his brain could send signals to his feet. Throat strike. Calibrated. Non-lethal, but painful enough to make breathing difficult for the next 20 minutes. Sweep. Jax fell backward, hit the pipe rack mounted on the wall. His bladder released. Dark stains spread across his camouflage pants, warm and shameful, the body's involuntary response to mortal terror. 3 opponents neutralized. Raven stood over them, breathing controlled, heart rate barely elevated, not even winded. Dane gasped on the concrete, clutching his wrist. Brett moaned through a shattered nose. Jax sat in his own urine, eyes wide, seeing her for the first time, not as prey, but as predator. Raven crouched beside Dane, voice quiet as a confessor, clinical as a surgeon explaining a terminal diagnosis. "Let me explain something to you." Her voice echoed in the corridor, soft but absolute. "I am a Navy SEAL. I have killed men better trained than you in conditions worse than this. I just gave birth to a daughter 6 months ago. Her name is Ember. She has her father's eyes and my refusal to accept limits." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Everything I did to you, I would do 1,000 times worse to protect her." Raven stood, walked toward the exit, then stopped, turned back. "My daughter will grow up in a world where men like you exist. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to get up, walk out of here, and remember this moment every single time you think about touching a woman who didn't invite you." She stepped closer, crouched again. "Because next time, and there better not be a next time, I won't stop at correction. I'll stop at conclusion." Brett tried to speak through blood and broken cartilage. Failed. "We're done here," Raven said. She walked out of the corridor, leaving 3 men lying in evidence of their own hubris. In the shadows, Keller Grimes stood frozen. He'd watched it all. Every second, every strike, every word. His hands were shaking, not from cold, from the realization that he'd been wrong about everything. About power, about strength, about what it meant to be dangerous in a world that confused size with capability. Dane groaned from the floor. "Help me up." Keller looked at him, at the broken nose, at the piss-stained pants, at the wrist bent at an angle that vertebrates weren't designed to achieve. "No." Dane stared at him through pain-blurred eyes. "What?" "I said no. You deserve that. All of you." "You're going to report me?" Keller stepped back, finding courage in the vacuum Raven had created. "Go ahead. Report me. Tell them what happened here. Tell them how 3 of you cornered a woman in an unsupervised corridor and tried to assault her. See how that goes." He walked away, leaving Dane to figure out how vertebrae worked when you were lying on concrete with a wrist that bent the wrong way. Keller had been invisible his entire life. Tonight, watching a woman destroy 3 men in heartbeats, he decided visibility might be worth the cost. Word spread like wildfire through Iron Gate. Not loudly, not officially, just the way information always moved in military facilities, through glances and whispers, in the particular silence that followed when certain names were mentioned. Dane Culver didn't show up for morning drills. Knee injury, someone said. No one asked for details. Brett Holloway walked through the conditioning annex with his nose taped, eyes averted from every woman he passed. The jokes that used to flow from his mouth like sewage had dried up. Silence suited him. Jax Marlowe existed as a ghost. He moved through training like smoke, there but not there, his eyes never making contact with anything human. A handful of heartbeats had recalibrated their understanding of the universe. Raven ran her morning PT at 0530, same as always. Pull-ups, push presses, rope work. Her form stayed surgical, not showy, precise. No victory lap, no gloating, no acknowledgement that she'd done anything other than defend herself against men who'd mistaken her for prey. Keller found her at the rope station during the afternoon session. "Ma'am, I need to talk to you." Raven looked up from chalking her hands, studied his face, saw shame written in every line. "About what, Petty Officer Grimes?" "About last night, about the corridor. I was there." Silence stretched between them, heavy as concrete. "I saw everything," Keller continued, words tumbling out like confession. "I was in the shadows. Dane invited me, said there was going to be a show, said the new SEAL mommy needed to learn her place." Raven set down the chalk, waited. "I didn't do anything. I didn't help you. I didn't stop them. I just watched." "That's correct." "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't need your apology, Petty Officer. I need to know why you were there in the first place." Keller looked at the floor. "Because I always follow. Because I never stand out. Because it's easier to be invisible than to be responsible. And now? Now I want to be different. I want to be the kind of man who doesn't stand in shadows while women fight alone." Raven studied his face, looking for deception, for manipulation, for the 1,000 ways men try to absolve themselves of complicity. She found none of that. Just shame, raw, honest, heavy. "You had a choice last night, Petty Officer. Watch or act. You chose wrong. But you have another choice now." Keller met her eyes. "You can pretend this never happened. Go back to being invisible. Stay on the edges of things that are wrong without ever stepping into the wrongness. Or you can become part of the solution." "How?" "You're going to deliver a message to every man in this facility who thinks that corridor is his playground. To every sailor who believes that women in uniform are available for testing." "What message?" Raven stepped closer. Her voice dropped to something cold and absolute. "Tell them what you saw. Tell them she didn't flinch. She didn't forgive. She didn't forget. Tell them that consequences are real, that underestimation is fatal, that women in uniform are not prey." Keller nodded slowly, understanding crystallizing. "I can do that." "I know you can. That's why I'm giving you the chance." She paused, hand on the rope, ready to climb. "And Keller?" "Yes, ma'am." "The next time you see something wrong, don't be invisible. Be inconvenient, because the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." She climbed, hand over hand, 30 feet up without stopping. Keller stood below, watching, understanding that he'd just been given a mission more important than any official assignment. He would carry that message. He would become inconvenient, and in the barracks that night, he delivered the first transmission of what would become legend. She dropped them, all three, didn't even breathe hard. His bunkmate stared. No shit. The entire fight lasted shorter than a breath. 3 opponents, all neutralized. That's not possible. It's not just possible, it happened. I saw it. The story spread, changed in the telling, added details, subtracted mercy, but the core remained constant. They tried to grope her. She destroyed them. And every man who heard the story understood the same fundamental truth. Underestimation has consequences measured in broken bones and shattered pride. Raven stood at attention before Sterling Maddox's desk. The office smelled like gun oil and old paper, walls covered with commendations from wars most sailors were too young to remember. "At ease, Commander." Raven relaxed slightly. Maddox studied her with his good eye, the one that had seen combat in Kuwait when Saddam Hussein thought he could take what didn't belong to him. "I heard interesting things this morning." "People talk, Master Chief." "They do, especially when something worth talking about happens." He paused. 3 sailors, all with injuries they can't explain, all suddenly very quiet about how they got them. Accidents happen in training facilities. In my experience, accidents happen to people who put themselves in dangerous situations. Raven said nothing. Maddox leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. "Commander, I'm going to tell you something off the record. Something that doesn't leave this office." "Yes, sir. I put you there." Silence crashed through the room like artillery. "Sir?" "The corridor. I knew Culver and his crew were hunting. Multiple complaints over the past 6 months. All dismissed for lack of evidence. The system failed. Someone had to succeed." Raven's jaw tightened. "You used me as bait." "I gave you an opportunity. There's a difference." Maddox stood, walked to the window overlooking the training yard. "The system is slow, Commander. Politics is slower, and women in uniform can't wait for institutions to protect them." He turned back, his eye patch catching light. "You know what I learned in Kuwait?" "What, sir?" "That capability doesn't care about what you're missing, only what you have. Those men saw my missing eye. They didn't see my intact will." He reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a worn eye patch, his backup, and a coin. The coin was old, scratched, with Arabic script on one side and an American eagle on the other. "Found this coin in the bunker, flipped it before every mission after that. 47 deployments. Came home every time." He placed both items on the desk. "You remind me of myself, Commander. They doubt you because you're different, because you carried a child, because they think motherhood made you soft. It didn't. I know, that's why I gave you the opportunity to prove it." He pushed the eye patch and coin toward her. "For you, my lucky charms. Pass them on when you find someone who needs them more." Raven picked up the items. The eye patch was leather, worn smooth by years of contact with skin. The coin felt heavy, meaningful, like it carried weight beyond metal. "Why me, sir?" "Because the system failed those women, but you didn't. You can't. It's not in your DNA." He paused. "Also because I read your file. Syria, what you did, what you lost. Flint Garrison, your mentor, covered your extraction, died so you could live." I hesitated for 2 seconds. "He died because I froze." Maddox shook his head. "He died because that's what mentors do. They sacrifice so the next generation can carry the torch further." "I should have saved him." "You should have learned from him, which you did. That's why you're here. That's why you didn't hesitate in the corridor. That's why 3 men are nursing injuries they can't explain." Raven's throat tightened. "What you did last night," Maddox continued, "wasn't just self-defense. It was a message. To every predator in this facility, to every woman who's been silent, to every good man who's been complicit." "What message?" "That consequences are real, that capability trumps size, that the corridor isn't theirs anymore." He extended his hand. "Thank you, Commander, for doing what I couldn't do through channels, for proving that sometimes the right thing isn't the official thing." Raven shook his hand. "Dismissed." She walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "Sir, what if there's a next time?" Maddox smiled. a rare expression that transformed his scarred face into something almost grandfatherly. Then there's a next time, and the next man will learn what the first three learned, that Raven Blackwood doesn't need permission to protect herself. Raven found the envelope in her locker at 1800 hours. No name, no return address, just a single sheet of paper folded twice, handwriting small and feminine, and shaking slightly at the edges like the hand that wrote it had been trembling. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood, I don't know how to write this. I'm not good with words. But I needed you to know. 2 years ago, something happened to me in that rinse corridor. Something I never reported. Something I've carried every day since. I thought it was my fault. I thought I should have been stronger, faster, better prepared. I thought I'd encouraged it somehow. Existed wrong, smiled wrong, breathed wrong. Then you came, and you showed me what strength actually looks like. It's not about being perfect. It's not about never being caught off guard. It's about what you do after. It's about refusing to be silent. It's about standing up even when standing up means fighting alone. Thank you for fighting when I couldn't. Thank you for proving that we don't have to accept what they try to take from us. I don't know if I'll ever be as strong as you, but I know I'll never be silent again. A sister in uniform, Raven, read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her pocket, next to the eye patch and coin Maddox had given her, next to the photo of Ember she carried everywhere. She understood now. This wasn't about 3 men in a corridor. This was about every woman who'd walked that corridor before her. Every woman who'd been grabbed. Every woman who'd stayed silent because silence seemed safer than sound. This was about changing the equation. And the weight of that responsibility pressed against her chest, not as burden, but as purpose. At 2300 hours, Raven sat alone in the secure communications room, the one reserved for classified briefings and encrypted calls that officially never happen. The message had arrived at 2200. Check secure channel Delta 7 at 2300. This is not optional. No signature, no explanation, just coordinates in the digital dark. Raven opened the channel. The screen flickered, static cleared. An admiral's insignia appeared. 4 stars, navy dress blues, the kind of rank that commanded aircraft carriers and made nations nervous. Then a face materialized. Female, 56 years old, gray threading through brown hair, eyes that had seen things civilians couldn't imagine. Admiral Thayer Harlow, first female SEAL to reach flag rank. Legend. Ghost. The woman who'd rewritten every rule about what women could do in combat. Commander Blackwood. Admiral. Raven stood at attention despite being alone. At ease, this is an unofficial conversation. What I'm about to tell you is classified above top secret. You will not discuss it with anyone except those I authorize. Clear? Yes, ma'am. Good. Harlow leaned forward. I've been watching what happened at Iron Gate. The corridor. The 3 sailors. The message you sent. Raven's pulse quickened. Ma'am, I can explain. I don't need explanations. I need results. And Commander, you delivered results. Silence stretched across encrypted connection. I have a mission for you, Harlow continued. Time-sensitive, high risk, the kind that requires someone the enemy will underestimate. What kind of mission, ma'am? The kind that happens behind enemy lines, in Syria, where American lives are measured in hours and consequences are measured in body bags. Raven's mouth went dry. Syria, where Flint died, where she hesitated, where 2 seconds changed everything. There's an American CIA operative, Harlow said, Dr. Sloan Mercer, kidnapped 3 days ago by a Syrian warlord called the Scorpion. We have 72 hours before she's moved to Russia. After that, she's unreachable. What do you need me to do? I need you to lead a 4-person extraction team. Go in quiet, get her out. Don't get caught, don't get killed, don't fail. Ma'am, with respect, there are male SEALs with more recent deployment experience. I don't want a male SEAL. I want you. Why? Harlow's face hardened. Because the Scorpion doesn't expect a woman. Because he thinks motherhood makes you soft. Because he's already killed 2 male extraction teams by predicting exactly how they'd operate. She paused. But he won't predict you, Commander. Because you're different. Because you just proved that different is dangerous. Because you're a mother who fights like the devil himself is chasing her. Raven thought about Ember, about Wyatt, about the life she'd built that this mission would risk destroying. Then she thought about Flint, about his last words, about the hesitation she couldn't take back. When do I deploy, Admiral? 36 hours. Pack your gear, select your team, study the briefing materials I'm sending to your secure terminal. Yes, ma'am. Commander? Ma'am? Don't freeze this time, Doctor. Mercer is counting on you. So are the 600 women currently serving in special operations who are watching to see if you succeed or fail. The screen went dark. Raven sat in darkness, hands shaking, breathing controlled, mind racing through scenarios that all ended in blood. Syria, the place where Flint died, the place where she hesitated, the place where she'd either redeem herself or join him in the ground. She stood, walked out of the communications room, and headed to the barracks to start packing. Behind her, the secure terminal beeped. Classified files downloading, mission parameters, target intelligence, rules of engagement, and photographs. Dr. Sloan Mercer, 38 years old, CIA operative, specialist in Middle Eastern relations. Kidnapped, beaten, waiting for rescue that might never come. And the Scorpion, Rashid Khalil, 45 years old, Syrian warlord, responsible for 30 coalition deaths, known for torturing prisoners, for leaving no witnesses, for being the kind of evil that made good men pray and bad men run. Raven stared at his photograph. She'd killed men like him before. She'd kill him again if necessary. For Dr. Mercer, for Flint, for Ember, for every woman who needed to know that standing up was possible, even when the odds said otherwise. The files finished downloading. Raven closed the terminal and walked into the Virginia night, where fog still rolled in from the Atlantic, and the weight of impossible missions pressed against her shoulders like hands trying to drag her down. She didn't break. SEALs don't break. Mothers don't break. She walked forward into whatever came next, carrying Maddox's coin and eye patch, carrying the anonymous letter, carrying Ember's photo, carrying Flint's memory, carrying the weight of proving that moments in a corridor could change everything. 36 hours wasn't enough time to prepare for death, but it was all Raven Blackwood had. The briefing room at Iron Gate smelled like coffee and tension. 4 chairs, 4 folders marked Top Secret in red letters that screamed consequences for unauthorized disclosure. 4 lives about to be risked on intelligence that was 72 hours old and degrading by the minute. Raven stood at the head of the table, studying the men who would follow her into Syria. Men who'd been told they were deploying in 18 hours. Men who didn't know their team leader was a woman until she walked through the door. Lieutenant Cade Hollister sat ramrod straight, 31 years old, poster boy for Navy recruiting, all jaw and confidence and barely concealed skepticism. Second in command, SEAL Team 5, 17 combat deployments, 0 missions led by female commanders. His eyes swept over Raven, cataloging her frame, her posture, the evidence that she'd given birth 6 months ago. She could see the calculation happening behind his professional mask, wondering if Admiral Harlow had lost her mind putting a new mother in charge of high-risk extraction. Petty Officer First Class Magnus Cross sat to Hollister's right. 33, demolitions expert, beard regulation length, eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little, hands scarred from playing with explosives that forgave no mistakes. On his phone's lock screen, an 8-year-old girl named Stella with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. He looked at Raven and saw someone else's daughter. someone else's mother. He understood the stakes. Petty Officer Keller Grimes occupied the third chair, 26, transformed in the 72 hours since the corridor. Sniper, the witness who'd chosen redemption over complicity. His rifle case lay at his feet like a religious artifact. Inside, a Barrett M82A1 that could punch through concrete at 1,000 meters. In his pocket, the message Raven had given him, memorized now, burned into his conscience. She didn't flinch. She didn't forgive. She didn't forget. The fourth chair sat empty, reserved for the team leader. Raven didn't sit. She opened her folder and let the photograph spill across the table. Dr. Sloan Mercer, CIA operative, 38 years old, captured 3 days ago while running an intelligence operation in southern Syria. Beaten, alive, waiting. And the Scorpion, Rashid Khalil, 45, former Mujahideen fighter during the Soviet occupation, current warlord operating in the lawless border regions where nations pretended they had no operatives. The scar across his face, souvenir from Soviet shrapnel decades ago, gave him the look of a man who'd survived what should have killed him. 32 confirmed kills of coalition forces, uncounted civilian deaths, reputation for creative torture that made hardened interrogators look away. "This is Dr. Sloan Mercer," Raven began, voice carrying the authority of someone who'd killed and buried the doubt. CIA operative, specialist in Syrian tribal relations, kidnapped 72 hours ago by this man. She tapped the Scorpion's photograph. Rashid Khalil, the Scorpion, operates a compound in the mountains 35 kilometers behind enemy lines. Intel suggests 50-plus fighters, hardened combat veterans, Syrian military defectors, true believers who die before surrendering. Hollister leaned forward. "Ma'am, with respect, the area's designation is Black Zone. No official American presence. If we're captured, the government disavows knowledge." "Correct. And our extraction window?" 72 hours from Dr. Mercer's capture, which means we have approximately 54 hours before she's moved to Russia. After that, she's politically untouchable. Magnus spoke for the first time, voice like gravel processed through a whiskey filter. "What's our exfil plan if things go sideways?" "Walk out. Syrian border is 80 kilometers northeast. If compromise occurs, you separate, evade, and make for the extraction point here." Raven indicated a spot on the map. "Helicopter pickup at coordinates Tango 7, but only if we maintain operational security. And if we don't, then we're ghosts. The mission never happened. We never existed." Silence settled over the table like snow covering graves. Keller cleared his throat. "Ma'am, what's the team composition?" "I'm primary, Lieutenant Hollister is second, Cross on demo, Grimes on precision fire." She paused. "Questions?" Hollister's jaw worked like he was chewing words too dangerous to swallow. Finally, "Commander, no disrespect intended, but you've been on maternity leave for 8 months. Some of us think this mission requires someone with more recent deployment experience." "Some of us, or you specifically, Lieutenant?" "Ma'am, I've led 17 combat operations in Syria and Afghanistan. I know the terrain. I know the enemy. I've earned the right to lead." Raven met his eyes without blinking. "You've earned the right to follow orders, which is what you'll do, unless you'd like me to contact Admiral Harlow and explain why you're refusing assignment." Hollister's face reddened, but he knew the calculus. Refusing orders meant court-martial. Court-martial meant end of career. End of career meant everything he'd built turned to ash. "No, ma'am. I'll follow orders." "Good, because I need your experience. But I lead. Clear?" "Crystal, ma'am." Raven turned to the others. "We insert via halo jump at 0300 tomorrow. 15-kilometer hike to observation point. 12 hours reconnaissance. Then we make the call. Exfiltrate the target or abort." "What are our rules of engagement?" Magnus asked. "Weapons free on positive identification, But understand this, Raven's voice dropped to something cold and absolute. The Scorpion has vowed to execute the next female American operative publicly. Dr. Mercer dies if we're detected, so we don't get detected. She let that sink in. Gear up. We fly out at 1800 hours. Dismissed. The men stood, filed out, left Raven alone with photographs of a woman she'd never met and a monster she'd have to kill. She picked up the Scorpion's photo, studied the scar, the eyes, the expression of a man who'd learned that cruelty was currency and mercy was weakness. In her pocket, her phone buzzed. Text from Wyatt. Ember said mama today. First word. I recorded it. Come home safe. Raven watched the video 3 times. Ember in her high chair, face smeared with mashed sweet potato, mouth working around syllables. Ma, mama. The sound knifed through Raven's chest, finding the spaces between ribs where mothers keep their hearts unguarded. She was missing first words. She'd missed first rollover. She'd miss first steps if this mission went wrong. But if she didn't go, another mother would never hear her daughter's voice again. The equation was simple. Brutal. Unavoidable. Raven deleted the video, not because she didn't want it, because she couldn't afford the distraction. She had 54 hours to become the kind of operator who saved lives instead of hesitating while mentors died. The kind who didn't freeze when seconds mattered. The kind Flint had believed she could be. The C-130 Hercules shook like God's own paint mixer as it crossed into Syrian airspace. No lights, no radio chatter, no acknowledgement from air traffic control, because officially this aircraft didn't exist, and the 4 figures in the cargo bay were ghosts wearing flesh. Raven checked her gear for the 6th time. M4 carbine, 9 magazines, silenced Glock 19, combat knife, medical kit, 60 pounds of equipment that would keep her alive or weigh her down when she died. Across the cargo bay, Hollister ran through his own pre-jump ritual, checking altimeter, testing oxygen, reviewing jump protocol like liturgy recited before communion. Magnus sat perfectly still, eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. His daughter's photo was taped inside his helmet, where he could see it every time he looked down. Keller cleaned his rifle with movements so practiced they'd become meditation. Cloth across barrel, oil on bolt, checking scope alignment for the 100th time because 1 millimeter at 1,000 meters meant the difference between salvation and catastrophe. The loadmaster's hand went up. 5 minutes. Raven stood. The team followed. They moved to the jump door in single file, clipping static lines to the overhead cable, becoming part of the machine that would spit them into darkness above a country that wanted them dead. 4 minutes. Raven thought about Ember, about Wyatt, about the life she'd built that this moment could erase. Then she thought about Flint, about how he'd stood in this exact position 17 months ago, preparing to jump into Syria, not knowing he'd never leave. Had he been scared? Of course he had. Only idiots weren't scared. Fear was the body's gift, the alarm system that kept you sharp when dull meant dead. 3 minutes, the loadmaster signaled. Raven moved to the door. Wind screamed past the opening, 30,000 feet of empty air between her and Syrian soil. Jump at this altitude and you felt for 90 seconds before pulling chute. 90 seconds of velocity and void, and the understanding that gravity forgave nothing. 2 minutes. Hollister positioned behind her, then Magnus, then Keller. 4 souls linked by static lines in shared certainty that some of them might not see sunrise. 1 minute. Raven pulled Maddox's coin from her pocket, flipped it, caught it. Heads, the eagle side. She'd assigned it meaning yesterday. Heads meant success, tails meant abort. Superstition. But warriors lived on superstition when logic failed. 30 seconds. The loadmaster's hand dropped. Green light. Raven jumped. Gravity seized her immediately, pulling her toward Earth at terminal velocity. Wind tore at her face. Cold burned her lungs. The world became sensation without thought, pure physics, the conversion of potential energy into kinetic reality. She counted 1001, 1002, 1003. At 1090, she pulled the ripcord. The parachute deployed with a crack like lightning splitting sky. Deceleration crushed her into the harness. Then she was floating, drifting, guided by hands on toggles and training too deep to forget. Below, darkness. Above, stars. Around her, 3 other parachutes descending through night like angels falling without redemption. Raven, oriented on the GPS coordinates, burned into her brain. Adjusted approach. Watch the altimeter count down through thousands of feet while Syria rose up to meet her. At 500 feet, she could make out terrain. Rocky, mountainous, unforgiving. At 100 feet, she prepared for impact. At 0 feet, the ground hit like a fist. Raven rolled, shedding the parachute, collapsing the canopy before wind could drag her across rocks that would shred flesh from bone. The others landed within 50 meters. 4 impacts, 4 successful deployments, no injuries, no compromise. Phase 1 complete. They gathered in a depression between boulders, invisible to everything except satellites that weren't looking. Hollister took point, Raven second, Magnus third, Keller rearguard. They moved in tactical formation, 15 kilometers to the observation point, 12 hours to study a compound where a woman was dying by degrees. The height took them through country that looked like God had scooped out beauty and left only function. Rocks, scrub brush, desolation measured in kilometers of nothing. But nothing was where operators lived. Nothing was safe. Nothing didn't have civilians who'd report American soldiers for money or ideology or fear. They walked through nothing, silent as ghosts, leaving footprints that wind would erase before dawn. At 0600, they reached the observation point, a ridge overlooking the Scorpion's compound. Raven glassed the area through binoculars while the others established concealment. The compound sat in a valley like a fortress from medieval nightmares. Stone walls, guard towers, main building constructed from materials that would shrug off anything short of bunker busters. Approximately 50 fighters visible in the courtyard, more inside, patterns of movement suggesting military training. Through a second-story window, a figure, female, bound to a chair, beaten but alive. Dr. Sloan Mercer. Raven's jaw tightened. "How many hostiles?" Hollister whispered. 50 visible, assume 75 total. We're 4 operators against 75. Those are suicide odds. Those are the odds we have. Magnus crawled up beside them, studying the compound through his own optics. Guard rotation every 4 hours. Shift change at 0600, 1000, 1400. They'll be tired and sloppy at 1000. That's our window. For what? Hollister asked. We can't assault that compound with 4 people. Raven lowered her binoculars, met his eyes. We're not assaulting. I'm going in alone. Silence crashed over the ridge like artillery. That's insane, Hollister said. That's strategy. You'll be captured, tortured, executed. Not if I'm faster than they expect and more dangerous than they imagine. She pulled out the tactical map, pointed to the compound's east wall. Syrian culture dictates treatment of female prisoners. They won't execute me immediately. They'll interrogate, try to use me as leverage. That gives me approximately 6 hours before the Scorpion loses patience. 6 hours to do what? Create chaos, free Dr. Mercer, fight our way to the extraction point while you provide overwatch and covering fire. Hollister's face reddened. Commander, that's not a plan. That's suicide with extra steps. You have a better option? Yes, we abort, return to base, let command send a drone strike. Which kills Dr. Mercer, which means we flew 5,000 miles to watch an American operative die. Is that acceptable to you, Lieutenant? Hollister's jaw worked. No words came. I didn't think so. Raven turned to Keller. What's your maximum effective range? 900 meters, maybe 1,000 with favorable wind. Position here. She indicated a ridge 800 meters northwest of the compound. You'll have line of sight to the courtyard and main building entrance. If I signal green smoke, you start taking targets. What about collateral damage? Magnus asked. Minimize it. But understand this. Everyone in that compound chose to work for a man who tortures women. They're not innocents. She looked at each of them. I know this sounds crazy. I know the odds are terrible, but Dr. Mercer is counting on us. So is every female operative currently deployed who needs to know rescue is possible. Silence stretched. Finally, Magnus spoke. I have a daughter, 8 years old. If she was captured, I'd want someone crazy enough to try the impossible. He pulled an encrypted phone from his pack, showed Raven a photo, Stella, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a sign that said, Daddy's Hero. Do it for her, he said, for all of them. Raven looked at Hollister. Are you in or out? He exhaled hard, looked at the compound, at the woman visible in the window, at the future where he'd have to live with leaving her behind. I'm in, but if you die, I'm telling Admiral Harlow this was a terrible idea. Fair enough. Raven began stripping gear, removed her helmet, her rifle, everything that identified her as American military. She kept only a combat knife hidden in her boot and a small smoke grenade concealed under her shirt. Hollister stared. You're really doing this? I really am. She pulled a headscarf from her pack, wrapped it over her hair, tore her shirt strategically, smeared dirt on her face, transformed herself from operator to refugee in 90 seconds. Syrian patrols use this valley, she said. When they find me, I'll claim my village was bombed, husband killed. I'm looking for shelter. They'll see through it. Maybe, but by the time they do, I'll be inside. And inside is where I need to be. She checked her watch. 09:30. Guard shift change in 30 minutes. Optimal timing. Give me 6 hours. If I'm not out by 1600, abort. Return to base. Tell Admiral Harlow I failed. And if you succeed, then you'll see green smoke. Be ready to move. Raven stood, took one last look at her team, at the men who'd followed her into madness, because sometimes madness was the only sane response to evil. See you on the other side, she said. Then she walked down the ridge toward the compound where a woman was dying and a monster was waiting. The patrol found her at 1000 exactly. 4 Syrian fighters in mismatched uniforms, carrying AK-47s like extensions of their arms, suspicious of everything that moved because paranoia kept you breathing in a country where trust was currency no one could afford. Raven stumbled toward them, hands raised, headscarf askew, face streaked with genuine tears she'd summoned by thinking about Ember, about never seeing her daughter again, about Wyatt raising her alone. Please, she said in Arabic, accent carefully modulated to suggest rural Syria. Please help me. My village, the bombs. My husband is dead. The fighters surrounded her, youngest maybe 19, oldest perhaps 40, all of them hard-eyed and evaluating her like livestock at auction. The leader stepped forward, scarred face, missing 2 fingers on his left hand, voice like rocks grinding. What village? Raven named a settlement that had been destroyed 2 years ago. Verifiable, distant enough that details would be fuzzy. Al-Qaim. The Americans bombed it. Everyone died. I ran. I've been walking for 3 days. The leader studied her face, looking for deception, for the telltale signs that separated truth from performance. Raven let tears flow, let her hands shake, let her body language scream broken and desperate and harmless. Please, she whispered, I have nothing, no one, I just want safety. The leader said something to his men in rapid Arabic. They laughed, cruel sound, the kind men make when they've found something weak they can hurt. He grabbed Raven's arm, pulled her toward the compound. The Scorpion will decide what to do with you. Perfect. They dragged her through the main gate, past guards who barely glanced at another refugee woman, another piece of human debris the war had coughed up. The courtyard smelled like diesel and cigarette smoke, and the particular stink that accumulates where men live without women to civilize them. The main building loomed ahead, stone construction, Soviet-era architecture, built to withstand bombardment and time and the erosion of empires. They took her inside, down a corridor lit by bare bulbs that flickered like dying stars, to a room where darkness pressed against walls and hope went to die. They threw her onto the floor. A woman sat bound to a chair in the corner, beaten, bruised, but conscious. Dr. Sloan Mercer looked up with eyes that had seen torture and decided death might be preferable. Then she saw Raven. Recognition flashed. CIA operatives were briefed on friendly forces. Mercer had seen Raven's photograph, knew exactly who she was looking at. Raven gave the slightest shake of her head. Not yet. Stay silent. The door opened. The Scorpion entered like weather that killed crops. Rashid Khalil, 45 years old, 6 feet of controlled violence. The scar across his face, souvenir from Soviet shrapnel decades ago, gave him the look of a man who'd survived what should have killed him. Eyes that had watched people die and felt nothing except mild curiosity about how long they'd scream. He studied Raven with the attention of a collector evaluating a specimen. Then he spoke, in perfect English. An interesting development. Raven's blood froze. He wasn't supposed to speak English. Intel said he was educated but provincial, tribal, limited. Intel was wrong. 2 American women in my compound on the same day. The Scorpion smiled. What are the odds? He walked closer, crouched beside Raven. His breath smelled like cardamom and violence. I know who you are, Lieutenant Commander Raven Blackwood. Navy SEAL, Team 3, new mother, 6-month-old daughter named Ember. The world tilted. He knew. Not just suspected, knew. Surprised? The Scorpion stood. I have friends in unexpected places. Friends who sell information for the right price. Friends who told me Admiral Harlow was sending an extraction team. Friends who described every member. He pulled out a tablet, showed Raven her own service photograph, her address, Wyatt's face, Ember's birth certificate. I know everything about you, Commander. I know you hesitated in Syria 18 months ago. I know your mentor died because you froze. I know you're here to redeem yourself. Raven said nothing. Calculated odds, measured distances. The knife in her boot suddenly felt very small against 75 fighters and a man who knew her secrets. Here's what's going to happen, the Scorpion continued. I'm going to kill you. Then I'm going to kill Dr. Mercer. Then I'm going to send your bodies back to Admiral Harlow with a message. American women don't belong in combat. They belong in graves. He turned to leave, stopped. Oh, and Commander, your team is on the northwest ridge, approximately 800 meters. I have snipers positioned to kill them the moment they move. So if you're thinking about signaling them, understand that you'll be signing their death warrants. The door closed. Locked. Silence crashed over the room like concrete. Dr. Mercer stared at Raven with eyes that asked the question everyone wanted answered. Now what? Raven pulled the knife from her boot, cut Mercer's bonds. Now, she whispered, we get creative. The cell had one window, barred, facing east, overlooking a section of courtyard where guards smoked and joked and pretended they weren't as scared as everyone else in a war zone. Raven studied the layout with eyes trained to see opportunities where others saw obstacles. Stone walls, solid but old. Mortar crumbling in places where time had eaten structural integrity. Iron bars on the window, rusted, maybe weak enough to break if leverage was applied correctly. One door, wood, reinforced with steel bands, locked from outside. Two guards visible through the crack at the bottom. Odds, terrible. Options, limited. Acceptable, no. "What's the plan?" Mercer whispered. She'd stopped bleeding from the cut above her eye. Bruises covered her arms where interrogators had worked her over with systematic cruelty. "How many guards outside the door?" "Two, armed with AKs. They rotate every hour." "The Scorpion, where's he now?" "Main hall, second floor, east wing. That's where he conducts business, meets with lieutenants, plans operations." Raven processed the information, built mental map, calculated approach vectors. "What about his men, loyalties?" "Mixed. Some are true believers. Others are here for money, fear, survival. The usual reasons men fight in wars that aren't theirs. Which means some might run if given the opportunity. Maybe, but don't count on it. The Scorpion rules through terror. His men know what happens to deserters." Raven moved to the window, tested the bars. Rust flaked under her fingers. Weak, possibly breakable. She checked her watch. 11:15. The team would be repositioning now. Keller finding optimal firing position. Magnus prepping demo charges for contingencies. Hollister cursing her name while following orders. They had 4 hours and 45 minutes before the abort window closed. Raven pulled the smoke grenade from under her shirt. Green. Signal for execute. Once she triggered it, the team would move. Keller would start dropping targets. Magnus would provide suppressing fire. Hollister would advance to extraction point. But the Scorpion had snipers watching her team, which meant signaling would get them killed, unless she eliminated the snipers first. "Where are the Scorpion snipers positioned?" Raven asked. "Guard towers, north and south, 2 in each tower, 4 total." Raven nodded. Workable. If she could reach the towers, if she could kill 4 trained shooters before they raised alarm, if she could do it while evading 70 fighters who'd kill her on sight. Simple. "How are you at running?" Raven asked. "Better than I am at being tortured." "Good, because when this starts, you don't stop. You run toward the east wall. Jump it if you can. If you can't, I'll make a hole. Then you run northeast for 800 meters. My team will cover you." "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you." "That's a lie." "That's a comforting lie. Take it." Mercer almost smiled. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the craziest." "Both. It's a gift." Raven returned to the window, gripped the bars, pulled. They didn't budge. She braced her foot against the wall, pulled harder, felt rust crack, felt metal strain, felt decades of oxidation surrender to physics. The bar bent. Not enough. She adjusted grip, pulled from a different angle, using body weight, using momentum, using the desperation that came from knowing Ember's face depended on this succeeding. The bar broke free. Sound echoed in the cell like thunder. Outside, voices, footsteps, guards responding to noise. Raven grabbed Mercer. "We go now. Out the window, drop to courtyard, run." "That's suicide." "That's the plan. Move." She shoved Mercer toward the window. The doctor climbed through the gap where the bar had been, dropped 8 feet to courtyard below, landed hard, stumbled, found her footing. Raven followed, hit the ground as the cell door burst open behind her. Shouting, alarms, the compound erupting into chaos as guards realized prisoners were escaping. Raven grabbed Mercer's arm. "Run, east wall, don't look back." They ran. Bullets chased them across the courtyard. Concrete exploded in chips where rounds impacted. Men poured from buildings like wasps from a kicked nest. Raven returned fire with the AK-47 she'd stripped from the first guard stupid enough to get close. 3-round bursts, controlled, efficient. Each trigger pull dropping a target. Mercer ran like salvation lived on the other side of the wall. 50 meters to the east barrier. 40, 30. More guards, blocking the path, raising weapons. Raven threw herself sideways, rolled, came up firing, dropped two hostiles. Third took cover, fourth raised his AK. Magnus's demolition charge detonated against the east wall. Stone exploded outward. Smoke and debris and a hole large enough to drive a truck through. The team had seen them, was providing cover. "Go!" Raven screamed. "Through the hole!" Mercer ran, dove through the breach, disappeared into smoke. Raven followed. The Scorpion's voice boomed across the compound. "Kill them! Kill them all!" Fighters converged, dozens, too many to fight, too many to escape. Raven pulled the smoke grenade, green canister, signal for her team to light up every hostile in sight. She triggered it. Smoke billowed. On the northwest ridge, 800 meters away, Keller Grimes centered his crosshairs on the north guard tower. Breathed out slowly. Remembered Raven teaching him altitude breathing. Remembered heartbeats in a corridor that changed everything. He fired. The Barrett M82A1 kicked like a mule trying to murder its rider. Keller absorbed the recoil. Watched through scope as the first sniper's head snapped back. Target down. He adjusted aim. 3 degrees left, elevated for wind. Second sniper in the north tower turned toward his fallen partner. Keller fired again. Target down. "South tower," Hollister commanded. "2 hostiles. Get them before they get us." Keller swung the rifle. Found targets. 2 snipers in the south tower scrambling for position, realizing they were being hunted, trying to locate the threat. Too late. Keller fired. Miss. The round impacted stone 6 inches left. He adjusted, compensated for crosswind he hadn't accounted for. Fired again. Target down. Last sniper dove for cover. Smart, survival instinct overriding training. Keller waited. Patient. Understanding that panic made men predictable. That fear drove them to mistakes. The sniper peeked over the tower wall. Fatal mistake. Keller fired. Target down. 4 shots, 4 kills. All snipers eliminated. "We're clear," he reported. Hollister keyed his radio. "Blackwood, snipers are down. Proceed to extraction." Static. "Blackwood, confirm receipt." More static. Then, "This is Mercer. Blackwood is engaging hostiles. We're separated. I'm making for your position." Hollister's jaw tightened. "Negative. Hold position. We're coming to you." "I can't hold. Hostiles in pursuit. I'm moving." Magnus grabbed his rifle. "We need to get down there." "Agreed. Grimes, provide overwatch. Hollister and I are advancing." They moved down the ridge at speed that would have broken ankles if they'd been less trained or more sane. Rocks and scrub brush and gravity trying to kill them before the Scorpion's fighters could. Through binoculars, Hollister saw Mercer running northeast, stumbling, falling, getting up, pure will animating a body that wanted to quit. Behind her, 8 fighters in pursuit, gaining, 50 meters back, 40, 30. "Grimes, targets in pursuit of Mercer. Light them up." "Engaging." Keller fired, adjusted, fired again. Each shot dropping a hostile until the pursuit faltered. Stopped, retreated to cover. Mercer kept running. Magnus reached her first, grabbed her, pulled her into defensive position behind boulders that would stop small arms fire. "Where's Blackwood?" he demanded. Mercer gasped for air. "Still in the compound, fighting. She told me to run, said she'd be right behind me." "That was a lie," Magnus said. "I know. She's buying us time." Raven had killed 12 men by the time she reached the main building. Not clean, not easy, brutal, close-quarters combat where mistakes measured in centimeters meant death. AK fire, knife work, hand-to-hand in corridors too narrow for grace. Her shoulder bled from a graze. Her ribs screamed from impact with a concrete pillar. Her hands were covered in blood that wasn't all hers. But she was moving forward. The Scorpion would be in the main hall, second floor, east wing. That's where leaders went when chaos erupted. To command, to control, to prove they were worth following. Raven climbed stairs 3 at a time, reached second floor, heard voices behind a heavy wooden door. She kicked it open. The Scorpion stood behind a desk. 5 lieutenants arranged around him, all armed, all turning toward the door. Too many. Raven threw herself sideways as gunfire shredded the doorframe where she'd been standing, rolled, came up firing, dropped 2 lieutenants before they could adjust aim. 3 remaining, plus the Scorpion. Bad odds. 1 lieutenant raised an AK. Raven shot him through the throat. He fell, gurgling. 2 left. They dove for cover. Smart, survival instinct kicking in. The Scorpion didn't move, just stood there, smiling. Impressive, Commander. You fight like a cornered animal. I fight like a mother. Same thing. He pulled a pistol. Not panicked, not rushed, deliberate. You know what I've learned about mothers? He said. They're easy to break. Find their children, threaten them. Mothers surrender. He showed her his phone. On screen, Raven's house in Virginia Beach. Wyatt in the window, holding Ember. Real-time surveillance. 1 phone call, the Scorpion said. That's all it takes. 1 call and my friends in America visit your family. Raven's world contracted to the image on that screen. Ember, Wyatt, everything she'd left behind, everything she'd promised to return to. Drop the weapon, Commander, or I make the call. She looked at the phone, at her family, at the choice between mission and love. Then she looked at the Scorpion's face, saw the certainty there, the belief that he'd won, that mothers were predictable, that love was weakness. He was wrong. Raven fired, not at the Scorpion, at his phone. The device exploded in his hand, glass in circuitry, gone. I'm a mother, Raven said, which means I'm more dangerous than you can imagine. She fired again. The Scorpion dropped behind the desk. The remaining lieutenants opened fire. Raven dove through the window. Glass exploded. Air rushed. Gravity seized her. She fell, 20 feet to the courtyard below. Landed hard, rolled, felt ribs crack, felt ankle twist. Got up anyway, limped toward the east wall, toward the hole Magnus had made, toward freedom. Behind her, the Scorpion's voice. Kill her! Kill the American! Fighters poured from buildings, too many to count, too many to fight. Raven ran. Not graceful, not fast, but forward, always forward. Bullets tore the air. Impacted stone chased her across open ground. 50 meters to the wall. 40, 30. Round caught her shoulder. Spun her. She stumbled, fell, got up. 20 meters. The Scorpion appeared in the second-story window, raised a rifle, drew bead on Raven's back. 10 meters. On the ridge, Keller saw the shot developing. 900 meters, uphill, crosswind, target partially obscured. Impossible shot, but Raven had taught him that impossible was just another word for difficult. He centered crosshairs on the Scorpion's head, remembered the corridor, capability trumping size. Breathed out, fired. The round traveled 900 meters in 1.2 seconds, passed 3 inches from Raven's head, entered the Scorpion's left eye, exited the back of his skull, taking brain matter with it. The Scorpion fell. Raven dove through the wall breach as the compound erupted in confused gunfire. Hollister grabbed her on the other side. Can you run? Can I breathe? Then run. They ran. Mercer in front, Magnus providing covering fire, Keller dropping targets from the ridge, Hollister half-carrying Raven when her ankle gave out. Behind them, chaos. Leaderless fighters shooting at shadows. The compound collapsing into itself. Ahead, helicopter sound. Extraction bird inbound. They reached the pickup point at 15:58, 2 minutes before abort window. The Black Hawk descended through dust and noise and salvation. They loaded Mercer first, then Raven, then Magnus, Hollister last. As the helicopter lifted, Raven looked back. The compound burned, Magnus's delayed charges detonating, erasing evidence, turning the Scorpion's fortress into tomb. She closed her eyes, thought about Ember, Wyatt, home, thought about Flint, about 18 months of carrying guilt, about hesitation. She hadn't frozen this time. This time, she'd fought, and everyone came home. The Black Hawk crossed into international airspace at 16:23 hours. Raven sat strapped into the jump seat, shoulder bandaged with field dressing that was already seeping red through white gauze, ribs taped tight enough to make breathing an exercise in controlled agony, ankles swollen to twice its normal size. The medic, some kid who looked too young to shave, much less treat combat wounds, kept trying to start an IV line. Raven kept waving him off. "Ma'am, you've lost blood. You need fluids." "I need to stay conscious." "Commander, you're going into shock." "Then I'll go into shock on my terms." She stared out the window at Syrian terrain falling away below. Somewhere in those mountains, the Scorpion's compound was burning. Somewhere in that fire, a monster had become ash. Somewhere in the chaos she'd left behind, 70 fighters were trying to understand how 4 Americans had walked into their fortress and walked out alive. Let them wonder, let them fear, let them understand that underestimation carried consequences measured in body bags in burning buildings. Dr. Sloan Mercer sat across the cabin, wrapped in thermal blanket, drinking water like she'd been crossing deserts. The bruises on her face had darkened to purple-black. Her wrists showed restraint marks, but her eyes were clear, focused, alive. She caught Raven watching, nodded once. Military acknowledgement between warriors who'd seen hell and refused to stay. No words needed. The message lived in the silence between them. Magnus cleaned his rifle with movements so automatic they'd become meditation. He hadn't spoken since extraction, just sat there processing what they'd done, what they'd survived. The mathematical impossibility of 4 operators against 70 fighters, ending with 4 operators flying home. Keller stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. 900 meters, impossible shot. The Scorpion's head exploding through his scope. He'd killed before. Long-range targets in Afghanistan, Iraq, the usual deployments where you pulled triggers and watched people become statistics. But this was different. This was personal. This was saving someone who'd saved him. Hollister sat beside Raven, jaw working like he was chewing words too complicated to swallow. Finally he spoke, voice barely audible over rotor noise. "That was the craziest thing I've ever seen." "Which part?" "All of it. Walking into a hostile compound alone, getting captured, fighting your way out, jumping through a second-story window." He paused. "You're either the luckiest operator I've ever met or blessed by God himself." "Neither. I'm just a mother who refuses to quit." "Mothers quit all the time, Commander. They quit jobs, quit dreams, quit everything for their kids." "Then I'm a different kind of mother." Hollister almost smiled. "Yeah, the terrifying kind." The helicopter banked east, heading for the carrier group stationed in international waters. Heading for safety. Heading for the next phase where paperwork replaced bullets and debriefings replaced combat. Raven closed her eyes. Let the vibration of rotor blades fill the spaces where adrenaline was draining away. Let exhaustion pull at her consciousness like hands dragging her towards sleep that might become coma if the medic was right about blood loss. But she couldn't sleep yet, not until she knew. She pulled out the encrypted phone they'd given her for emergency contact, dialed Wyatt's number with fingers that shook from more than injury. 3 rings, 4, 5, then, "Raven?" Wyatt's voice hit her chest like defibrillator paddles, shocking a stopped heart back to rhythm. "I'm alive. I'm coming home." Silence. Then sounds that might have been crying or laughing, or both mixed together into the noise people make when relief collides with fear and creates something without name. I saw the news, the compound, the explosions. They said there were casualties but wouldn't confirm who. Not me, not my team. We got her out. Jesus Christ, Raven. I know. When are you home? 72 hours, maybe less. I need medical clearance first. How bad are you hurt? Not bad enough to matter. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. She heard movement, Ember making sounds in the background, 6 months old and already loud enough to make her presence known from 5,000 miles away. She kept watching the door all day, Wyatt said, looking for you. Let me hear her. She can't understand you on the phone. I know, but I need to hear her breathe. Shuffling sounds, then breathing. Baby breathing, the most beautiful sound in the universe. Hey, Ember, it's Mama. Mama's coming home, baby girl. I promised I would, and I am. Ember made sounds, syllables without meaning, pure noise that carried the weight of everything Raven was fighting for. I love you, Raven whispered. Mama loves you so much. The call ended. Raven sat in the helicopter with tears running down her face, and the medic finally managing to get the IV line started because she was too broken to resist anymore. She let the fluids flow, let the exhaustion take her, let the darkness come. But before sleep claimed her completely, she thought about Flint, about Syria 18 months ago, about hesitation that cost him everything. She hadn't frozen this time. This time, she'd run toward the bullets instead of away. This time, everyone came home. Flint would have been proud. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and flowers someone had sent without asking permission. Raven lay in bed connected to monitors that beeped reassurance to nurses who checked vitals every hour like they were guarding state secrets. Shoulder surgery to remove bullet fragments, 17 stitches, 3 cracked ribs, severely sprained ankle, concussion, dehydration, exhaustion so profound it had its own diagnosis. The doctors said she was lucky. Raven said she was thorough. The door opened. Admiral Thayer Harlow entered like weather systems that change climates. 56 years old, gray threading through regulation haircut, eyes that had seen combat when women in special operations were theory instead of reality. She sat in the visitor chair without asking, studied Raven with the attention of someone evaluating equipment for flaws. Hell of a mission, Commander. Thank you, ma'am. You disobeyed protocol, took unnecessary risks, nearly got yourself killed attempting a solo infiltration that every tactical manual says is suicide. Raven waited for the other shoe to drop. And you succeeded when every male team we sent failed. Harlow leaned back. Dr. Mercer is safe. The Scorpion is dead. His compound is destroyed. Syria is destabilized in ways that benefit American interests. And you did it with 4 operators in audacity that borders on insanity. Is there a reprimand coming, ma'am? On the contrary, there's a Navy Cross nomination and a promotion to full commander pending Senate confirmation. The words didn't register immediately. Navy Cross, second highest military decoration, given for extraordinary heroism in combat. The kind of award that came with ceremonies and speeches in recognition Raven didn't want. Ma'am, I don't need recognition. I need to go home to my daughter. You'll do both. Harlow pulled a folder from her briefcase. Because I have another assignment for you, one that doesn't involve getting shot. She opened the folder. Inside, photographs of female sailors, hundreds of them, young, determined, scared. Female Combat Integration and Training Initiative, Harlow said. FCITI, program designed to prepare women for special operations roles. We need someone to lead it. Someone who's proven that women belong in combat. Someone the next generation can look at and see possibility instead of limitation. You want me to be an instructor? I want you to be a revolution. Raven studied the photographs, saw herself at 20, saw Morgan Thatcher in The Anonymous Letter Writer, saw every woman who'd walked the rinse corridor and survived and stayed silent because silence seems safer than sound. Where would this be based? Coronado, California, Naval Special Warfare Center. You'd be home every night, weekends with your daughter, regular schedule. I've never had regular schedule in my life. Then maybe it's time to try. Harlow stood, prepared to leave, then stopped. Commander, I need to tell you something, off the record. Ma'am? 25 years ago, I was you, first female SEAL, new mother, 2-year-old daughter named Emma. The Navy offered me choice, take a desk job and raise my daughter, or keep deploying and miss her childhood. Harlow's face hardened into something distant and pained. I chose deployments, chose career, told myself Emma would understand when she was older, that the mission mattered more than bedtime stories. Did she understand? She's 27 now. We talk twice a year, Christmas and her birthday. She resents me, rightfully so. I missed everything. First day of school, first boyfriend, high school graduation, college. Harlow pulled out her phone, showed Raven a photo, young woman in wedding dress, beautiful, smiling, standing with a man who wasn't Harlow. That's Emma, her wedding. Last year, Harlow's voice cracked. I found out from Facebook. She didn't invite me, didn't even tell me she was engaged. Raven's throat tightened. Admiral, the man walking her down the aisle, her high school softball coach, because I missed every game, every recital, every moment that mattered. Harlow put the phone away. She told him he was more of a parent than I ever was. Silence. So when I tell you to go home every night, Harlow continued, I'm not giving advice. I'm begging you not to become me. Not to look at photos of your daughter's wedding on social media because you weren't important enough to get an invitation. Admiral Harlow met Raven's eyes. I sacrificed my daughter for my career, and I've spent every day since wondering if it was worth it. Don't make my mistake. Take this job. Go home every night. Be there for Ember's firsts, because they don't repeat. They don't wait. They happen once, and if you miss them, they're gone forever. She walked to the door, paused. You have 72 hours to decide. After that, I offer the position to someone else. The door closed. Raven lay in the hospital bed thinking about choices and consequences and the mathematics of motherhood, where every decision carried weight impossible to measure until years later when damage was already done. Wyatt met her at Norfolk Naval Station with Ember strapped to his chest in one of those tactical baby carriers that let fathers pretend they were operators while doing grocery shopping. Raven's shoulder was still bandaged, ribs still taped, ankle wrapped tight enough to support weight, but not sprinting. She walked off the transport aircraft looking like she'd been through a war, which she had. Ember saw her first. 6 months old and already capable of recognition that transcended distance. The baby's face lit up with something that might have been joy or relief, or simply understanding that Mama was finally home. Mama, Mama, Mama. The word Raven had missed, the first word, repeated now like incantation, like prayer, like the only word that mattered. Wyatt unstrapped Ember, handed her over. Raven took her daughter carefully, conscious of injuries that made holding 20 pounds of squirming baby girl an exercise in controlled pain. But pain didn't matter. Nothing mattered Ember's weight against her chest. Ember's hands grabbing her face. Ember's voice saying, Mama, over and over, like she was making up for lost time. Raven buried her face in her daughter's hair and cried. Not silent tears this time, full body sobbing that came from places deeper than injury, from the spaces where mothers keep the fear they can't show anyone, the terror that deployment means never coming home, that the last kiss was the last kiss, that their children will grow up with photographs instead of parents. Wyatt wrapped his arms around both of them, made a wall of his body against the world. Let Raven break in the only place she could afford to be broken. "You're home," he whispered. "You're safe. We have you." They stood in the parking lot of Norfolk Naval Station, holding each other while sunset painted Virginia Beach in colors that promised tomorrow. Eventually, the crying stopped. Eventually, Raven wiped her eyes and looked at Wyatt and said the words she'd been rehearsing for 3 weeks. "I'm taking the job, the training program, Coronado. We're moving to California." Wyatt blinked. "What job?" She told him about Admiral Harlow, about FCITI, about the choice between deploying or teaching, between missing Ember's childhood or being present for every moment. "You're giving up active duty?" "I'm changing what active duty means, teaching women to survive, to fight, to come home to their daughters." She paused. "I'm finishing what Flint started, what every woman who walked that corridor needed." "When do we leave?" 2 months, after medical clearance in transition paperwork." Wyatt kissed her forehead. "Then we have 2 months to pack 17 years of your stuff and convince Ember that California is just Virginia with better weather." They drove home through traffic that moved like molasses. Home to the house Raven had left a lifetime ago. Home to the life that deployment had paused, but not destroyed. That night, after Ember was asleep and Wyatt was reading in bed, Raven sat alone in the nursery, watching her daughter breathe. 6 months old, already different from the infant she'd left behind. Bigger, stronger, capable of rolling over and saying, "Mama," and recognizing faces. All changes Raven had missed. But she wouldn't miss the next ones. Wouldn't miss first steps or first words beyond "Mama," or first everything that made childhood the foundation of who people became. She pulled out her phone, opened the encrypted email Admiral Harlow had sent. Subject: FCITI position, accept or decline. Raven typed 2 words: "I accept." Hit send. Watch the email disappear into digital infrastructure that would transform her life from operator to instructor, from warrior to teacher, from someone who fought battles to someone who prepared others to fight them. The next morning she received confirmation. Raven showed Wyatt the email over breakfast while Ember threw mashed banana at the wall with the enthusiasm of someone discovering physics. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Terrified, excited, like I'm stepping off a cliff without knowing if there's ground below." "There's ground. I'll make sure of it." "How?" "By being here, by raising our daughter, by building the life you're fighting for." He grabbed her hand across the table. "You go change the world. I'll keep the home fires burning." "That's a lot of responsibility." "So is what you're doing. We'll manage." They managed. The first day of FCIT, I brought 200 women to Coronado, ages 22 to 35. Every military branch represented: Navy, Marines, Army, Air Force. All of them volunteers. All of them knowing the program had 90% attrition rate by design. Only the best would graduate. Only the relentless would survive. Raven stood at the front of the auditorium in dress uniform, shoulder healed, ribs mended, ankles strong enough to run 5 miles without complaint. Behind her, projected on the screen, photographs from Syria. The compound, the extraction, the aftermath. She didn't start with introduction, didn't waste time on pleasantries, just showed them what they were signing up for. 6 months ago, she began, voice carrying to the back rows without microphone, I infiltrated a Syrian compound alone, fought 75 enemy combatants, saved an American operative, came home alive. She paused. But the hardest thing I've ever done wasn't fighting terrorists. It was leaving my 6-month-old daughter to do it. Silence settled over the auditorium like snow covering graves. You're here because you want to prove women belong in special operations. I'm here to tell you something different. You don't need to prove anything. You need to be ready. Because the enemy won't care about your gender. They'll care about killing you. And if you're not prepared, they will. She advanced the slide. New image. The rinse corridor at Iron Gate. Concrete walls, flickering lights. The place where three men learned that motherhood doesn't make women soft. Some of you have been harassed, assaulted, told you don't belong in uniform, told to stay quiet, accept it, move on. Raven's voice hardened. I'm telling you different. Stay loud. Fight back. Refuse to accept less than you deserve. Because silence protects predators, sound protects everyone else. She saw heads nodding, saw recognition in eyes that had walked similar corridors, seen similar predators. This program will break you. It's designed to. We don't want operators who quit when things get hard. We want warriors who understand that hard is just the beginning, that combat doesn't care about your feelings, that the enemy won't give you participation trophies. Another slide. The team, Hollister, Magnus, Keller, all of them looking tired and alive and victorious. You'll work harder than the men, train longer, prove yourselves constantly. That's not fair, that's reality. And reality doesn't negotiate. She looked across the auditorium, 200 faces, 200 futures, 200 women who could change everything or wash out trying. My daughter's name is Ember. She's 13 months old. Every morning I kiss her goodbye and come here to train you. Every night I go home and read her stories about brave knights and dragons and princesses who save themselves. Raven's voice softened slightly. I'm doing this for her. So when she's old enough to serve, she enters a military that respects capability over gender, that values results over appearance, that understands women in uniform aren't the exception, we're the evolution. She stepped back from the podium. Welcome to FCITI. Welcome to the hardest 6 months of your life. Welcome to becoming the operators the enemy fears and the allies everyone wants. The applause started in the back rows, spread forward, became thunder. Raven stood in front of it, accepting acknowledgement she didn't want, but understood was necessary. Leaders had to be visible, had to be examples, had to be the possibility made flesh. After the assembly, she found Colonel Sterling Maddox waiting outside her office. He'd flown in from Iron Gate for the ceremony. 69 years old now, eye patch weathered from decades of wear, walking stick replacing the cane he'd used before, age catching up despite his refusal to acknowledge it. Hell of a speech, Commander. Learn from the best, Colonel. Flattery doesn't suit you. Neither does modesty, but we both manage. Maddox almost smiled, handed her a package wrapped in brown paper. What's this? Open it. Inside, his Navy Cross from Kuwait, the medal he'd earned saving 12 POWs while half-blind and bleeding, the recognition that defined his career. I can't accept this, sir. You're not accepting it, you're holding it. For the next operator who needs to understand that medals don't matter as much as missions. That recognition is nice, but results are necessary. Why give it to me? Because you become what I was trying to be, someone who changes the system by refusing to accept its limitations. He paused. Also because I'm retiring next month. 70 years old is too old for active duty, even for stubborn bastards like me. Raven felt something crack in her chest. You're leaving? I'm moving to the next phase, consultant work, speaking engagements, maybe writing a book about women in combat and the idiots who doubted them. You're going to write a book? Someone should. Might as well be me. They stood in the California sunshine making small talk that meant everything. Teacher and student, mentor and protege, the old guard passing torch to the new. Finally, Maddox said what they'd both been avoiding. You did good, Blackwood. Better than good. You're building something that will outlast both of us. That's legacy. I'm just trying to survive each day without screwing up too badly. That's what everyone says who's actually making a difference. He turned to leave, stopped. One more thing. The anonymous letter you received at Iron Gate, the woman who wrote it. What about her? She came forward, filed formal complaint, named her attackers, started an investigation that's currently dismantling an entire network of predators who thought corridors belonged to them. Raven's throat tightened. Who was she? Doesn't matter. What matters is you gave her the courage to speak, to fight back, to refuse silence. Did she get justice? She got something better. She got her voice back. Maddox walked away. Raven stood, holding his Navy cross, thinking about ripples and waves, and how one action in a corridor could become movement that changed everything. The first graduation ceremony brought families from across the country. Mothers, fathers, siblings, spouses, children. All of them watching daughters and sisters and wives and mothers receive recognition for surviving 6 months of training designed to eliminate the weak. 200 started, 43 graduated. Raven stood on stage beside Admiral Harlow, watching the newly minted operators receive their certifications, watching futures unfold, watching possibility become reality. Lieutenant Sawyer Thatcher graduated top of class, Morgan's younger sister. The woman who joined because someone showed her strength looked different than she'd been taught. Petty Officer Reese Maddox graduated third, Sterling Maddox's granddaughter. 24 years old and proving bloodlines carried more than names. Chief Warrant Officer India Garrison graduated 7th. Flint's younger sister, 28, fierce, fighting for the brother who died believing women like her would change everything. One by one they crossed the stage. One by one they shook Raven's hand. One by one they became the answer to every man who'd ever said women didn't belong. After the ceremony, Raven found Admiral Harlow standing alone watching the celebration. "You did it," Harlow said. "Built something that matters. We did it. This was your vision. Vision is easy. Execution is hard. You executed." They stood in comfortable silence watching families celebrate, watching the future take shape. "How's Emma?" Raven asked. Harlow's face shifted. Something that might have been pain or hope or both. "We talked last month. First real conversation in years. She told me she's pregnant. I'm going to be a grandmother." "That's wonderful." "She asked if I wanted to be involved, if I'd missed enough, or if there was room for me in her life." "What did you say?" "I said I'd missed enough for 10 lifetimes, that I wanted every moment I could get, that I was sorry for choosing career over family, and understood if she couldn't forgive me." "Did she?" "She's thinking about it, which is more than I deserve." Harlow turned to Raven. "Don't make my mistakes, Commander. You have something I didn't. Balance. The ability to be both warrior and mother. Don't sacrifice one for the other." "I'm trying." "Try harder, because Ember won't be young forever, and the moments you miss don't come back." She walked away, left Raven thinking about time and choices, and the impossible mathematics of being everything to everyone. That night, Raven came home to find Wyatt and Ember in the backyard. Ember was walking now, 19 months old and mobile, toddling around with the confidence of someone who'd figured out bipedal locomotion and decided it was superior to crawling. "Mama!" Ember ran toward her on unsteady legs. Raven caught her, lifted her, spun her around while Ember shrieked with laughter that made everything else disappear. "How was graduation?" Wyatt asked. "Perfect. 43 new operators, 43 women who'll change the system. And you?" "I'm tired, proud, worried I'm missing too much of Ember's life despite being home every night." "You're not missing anything that matters." "How do you know?" "Because you're here, present, engaged. You read her stories every night. You take her to the park on weekends. You're building memories she'll carry forever." He paused. "That's not missing. That's showing up." Raven buried her face in Ember's hair, breathed in the smell of baby shampoo and innocence, and everything worth protecting. "I love you both so much." "We know," Wyatt said. "Now come inside, dinner's ready." And by dinner I mean macaroni and cheese because Ember refuses to eat anything else. They went inside. ate macaroni and cheese, gave Ember a bath, read stories about dragons and princesses and brave knights, put her to bed, lived the life Raven was fighting to protect, the life that made everything else worthwhile. The recruiter's office in Virginia Beach hadn't changed much in 17 years. Same government-issue furniture, same posters showing diverse sailors doing heroic things, same smell of floor polish and possibility. Ember Blackwood sat across from the recruiter, 17 years old, high school diploma fresh, eyes carrying determination that genetics had provided and upbringing had refined. "Any family in service?" the recruiter asked. "My mother, Rear Admiral Raven Blackwood." The recruiter's hand froze mid-keystroke. "The Raven Blackwood? Operation Shadowfall? The Corridor Protocol? Commander of FCITI?" "Yes, sir. Your mother is a legend." "I know." "So why are you here? You could coast on her reputation. Get assignments anywhere you want." Ember leaned forward. "I'm here because my mother taught me that reputation is inheritance. Legacy is what you build yourself. I don't want to coast. I want to earn it." The recruiter studied her face, saw Raven's eyes, Wyatt's jawline, something entirely her own in the expression. "What do you want to do in the Navy?" "I want to be a SEAL, like my mother, like my Uncle Flint, like all the women who proved it was possible. SEAL training is brutal, 90% attrition rate. Most people quit. My mother didn't quit when terrorists captured her. She didn't quit when 3 men cornered her in a corridor. She didn't quit when everyone said women didn't belong." Ember's voice hardened. "I'm her daughter. Quitting isn't in my DNA." The recruiter smiled, pulled out enlistment paperwork. "Welcome to the United States Navy, Ember Blackwood. Let's make your mother proud." "Sir, with respect, I'm not trying to make her proud. I'm trying to honor what she built, continue what she started, prove that the next generation is stronger because of hers." She signed the paperwork, committed to a future that 17 years ago hadn't existed. That night she called home. Raven answered on the second ring. 42 years old now, Rear Admiral, 2 stars, commander of the largest female combat training operation in American military history, author of 3 books on integration and tactics. Mother. "Hey baby, what's going on?" "I enlisted." Silence crashed across the phone line. Then, "When?" "Today. I ship out to basic training in 60 days. SEAL selection after that." More silence, longer this time. "Mom, say something." Raven's voice came out choked. "I'm terrified, proud, worried you're doing this because of me instead of for yourself." "I'm doing it because of you and for myself, because you showed me what's possible, because I want to carry the torch further." "It's dangerous, Ember. People die in training. People die in combat." "I know. You've told me the stories. Uncle Flint, the Scorpion, all of it. But you also told me that some things are worth dying for, worth fighting for, worth becoming more than you thought possible." Raven was crying now, full body sobbing transmitted through cellular infrastructure connecting California to Virginia. "You're my baby, my first word, my first steps, my entire heart walking around outside my body. How am I supposed to send you into danger?" "The same way Grandpa Wyatt sent you, with love, with trust, with understanding that this is my choice and my path and my future. I hate that you're right. You raised me to be right." They talked for 2 hours, about training, about fear, about the reality that Ember was stepping into a world Raven had fought to make safer, but could never make safe. When the call ended, Raven sat in her office at Coronado, staring at photographs that covered the walls. Flint in Syria, the team from Operation Shadowfall, graduation classes from 15 years of FCITI, thousands of faces, thousands of women who'd walked through fire because someone showed them it was possible. And now her daughter was joining them. The cycle continuing, the legacy expanding, the torch passing to hands she'd held when they were small enough to wrap around her finger. Wyatt found her there at midnight, tears dried, eyes distant. She told you. She told me. How do you feel? Like I did everything right and everything wrong simultaneously. Like I built this world for her, and now I'm terrified she's going to live in it. Wyatt sat beside her, took her hand. She's strong, smart, trained by the best. She'll be fine. Flint was strong, smart, trained by the best. He died anyway. Flint died a hero. If Ember follows that path, she dies changing the world. That's not tragedy, that's legacy. It's still death. It's still meaningful. They sat in silence, watching moonlight paint California in colors that promised tomorrow. Eventually, Raven spoke. I need to visit someone. Section 60, where the recent dead slept beneath white stones that stretched to horizon. Raven found Flint's grave by memory. She'd visited 40 times in 17 years, brought flowers, stories, updates about the world he'd died protecting. She sat on grass still damp from morning dew. Hey, Flint, it's me, again. Wind moved through trees overhead. Birds sang, life continuing despite death trying to stop it. Ember enlisted. She's going to be a SEAL, like us, like all the women we fought for. Raven traced fingers across his headstone. Lieutenant Commander Flint Garrison, died in service, honored, remembered. I'm terrified. She's my baby, my everything, and I'm sending her into the same world that killed you. How do I do that? How do I let her go knowing she might not come back? The stone didn't answer. Dead men rarely did. But Raven heard Flint's voice anyway. Memory playing recordings stored in spaces where the heart keeps people alive, despite biology disagreeing. Make them remember, Raven. Make them understand what we fought for, what we died for, what the next generation inherits. I did. I made them remember, built programs, trained thousands, changed the system, and now my daughter is walking into that system, and I can't protect her. You're not supposed to protect her. You're supposed to prepare her. There's a difference. What if preparation isn't enough? Then she'll learn to adapt. Like you did. Like I did. Like everyone who survives combat instead of becoming statistic. Raven stood, placed flowers on the grave, white roses, Flint's favorite. I miss you. Every day, every moment. You should be here. Should have met Ember. Should have seen what we built. I am here. In every woman who graduates FCITI. In every operator who refuses to quit. In your daughter who's brave enough to follow footprints we left in blood. That's not the same as alive. No, but it's the best death offers. Purpose, continuation, legacy that outlasts the body. Raven saluted the stone. Military precision, final acknowledgement. Rest easy, Flint. We've got it from here. She walked away, left the dead to their silence, returned to the living who needed her. Ember's basic training graduation brought the whole family. Raven in dress uniform, Wyatt in civilian clothes trying not to cry. Extended family, friends, the support network that made military service possible. They watched Ember march in formation with 100 other recruits, watched her salute, watched her become sailor. Afterward, during the family meet and greet, Ember approached in dress whites, looking older than 17 should allow. Hey, Mom. Hey, warrior. They hugged. Raven felt Ember's body, stronger now, trained, capable, and remembered holding her as in 20 pounds of helpless, now 130 pounds of dangerous. I'm heading to SEAL prep next week, Ember said. I know. I pulled strings, got assigned as guest instructor for your class. You're going to train me? I'm going to make sure you're ready. There's a difference. Ember smiled. That's what I hoped you'd say. They walked together through the facility, mother and daughter, Admiral and recruit, past and future. Are you scared? Raven asked. Terrified, excited, all of it. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Overconfidence gets you killed. You sound like your stories about Uncle Flint. He taught me everything worth knowing. Now I'm teaching you. What's the most important lesson? Raven stopped, looked at her daughter. Don't freeze. When the moment comes, and it will come, don't hesitate. Act, adapt, survive. Because hesitation can cost everything. Is that what happened to Uncle Flint? That's what happened to me. I hesitated. He died. I've spent 17 years making sure no one else pays that price. Ember took her mother's hand. Then teach me not to freeze. Teach me to be the operator you wish you'd been in Syria. Teach me to make him proud. You already make him proud. You make everyone proud. Now you just need to survive long enough to matter. They resumed walking, but Raven stopped again. Wait, before you go, one more thing. She led Ember to the obstacle course. Empty now, afternoon sun beating down. Want to run it? Ember asked. One last time as civilians? You're not a civilian anymore. One last time as mother and daughter then, before I'm Recruit Blackwood and you're Admiral Blackwood. Raven looked at the course. Walls to climb, ropes to swing, obstacles designed to break the weak. Race you, she said. They ran. Raven's ankle, fully healed now, held. Her ribs didn't protest. Her shoulder remembered how to move without pain. But Ember was faster, younger, stronger. The future outpacing the past. At the finish line, Ember stood breathing hard, grinning, victorious. Raven crossed 30 seconds later. Not defeated, proud. You beat me. You taught me how. Good. Raven pulled her daughter close. That's what mothers do. Teach their daughters to surpass them, to run faster, jump higher, be more than we could be. Ember's grin faded. Tears came. I'm scared, Mom. I know. What if I'm not good enough? Then you'll fail, fall, get back up, try again. Raven held her face. Like I did, like Flint did, like everyone who ever mattered. What if I die? Silence. Then you'll die doing something that mattered, fighting for something bigger than yourself. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure people remember why. They held each other on the obstacle course while the sun set, and the future waited, and the past released its grip. Mother and daughter, teacher and student, the cycle continuing, the legacy expanding, the future unfolding one step at a time. Raven stood backstage watching the latest class graduate. 47 women this time. The program was growing. In the audience, she spotted familiar faces. Morgan Thatcher sat in the front row, now lieutenant commander, running her own training program at Great Lakes. The bruise on her wrist had healed years ago. The voice she'd found never faded. Dr. Sloan Mercer sat beside her, now deputy director of CIA operations. She'd testified before Congress about her rescue, about what happened when you sent the right operator regardless of gender. The testimony changed policies that changed lives. And in the back row, trying to be invisible, Dane Culver, discharged from the Navy 3 years ago, honorable barely. He'd requested permission to attend, to see what he'd tried to destroy. After the ceremony, he approached Raven, older, grayer, humbled. Commander, Admiral, I wanted to say, don't. Raven's voice wasn't cruel, just final. You don't get forgiveness. You get to live with what you did, to remember it every day, to understand that moments in a corridor changed you more than they changed me. Dane nodded, started to leave. But Dane, he turned, thank you for being the lesson. Someone had to be. I'm sorry it was you. He walked away. Raven watched him go. Some stories didn't have happy endings. They just had endings. And that was enough. Lieutenant Junior Grade Ember Blackwood stood on the deck of a destroyer in the Persian Gulf, 22 years old, sealed trident gleaming on her chest, watching sunset paint water in colors that promise tomorrow. Her phone buzzed. Text from Raven. How's deployment? Same as always. Dangerous, meaningful, worth it. Miss you. Miss you too. But I'm doing what you taught me, making a difference, refusing to quit. Proud of you, baby girl. Come home safe. Always. Ember pocketed the phone, looked at the horizon where countries met and conflicts began. Somewhere out there, someone needed rescue. Somewhere, injustice needed correction. Somewhere, the work continued. The work her mother started. The work her Uncle Flint died for. The work she'd carry forward until the next generation took the torch and ran further. Behind her, the destroyer's klaxon sounded. Mission brief in 30 minutes. Deployment into hostile territory. High risk. Necessary. Ember smiled, checked her gear, made sure the knife was secured in her boot, made sure the photo of her mother holding her as infant was safe in her pocket, made sure Maddox's coin, passed down through Raven, was in her left breast pocket, made sure she was ready for whatever came next, because hesitation died with Uncle Flint, because quitting betrayed everyone who'd fought before her, because failure wasn't in Blackwood blood. She was Ember Blackwood, daughter of Raven, niece of Flint, legacy of everyone who'd fought to make this moment possible. And she would make them remember.